Hi, welcome to the CTO-CTO podcast. Finland's-based Mirka is one of the biggest sandpaper manufacturers in the world. Today's guest is Mathias Rönnlund, systems architect at Mirka. Piotr speaks to Matthias about the D2C project based on SAP Spartacus. The conversation then moves to IoT and Microsoft Azure, as well as ways of leveraging the cloud-native approach without getting into a vendor lock-in situation. Among many other topics, Matthias also shares his rule of thumb for managing the organization, which is don't generalize too early. Even at their scale, this rule allows Mirka to operate at a startup's pace, yet within very well-organized and set industrial processes. Let's begin.
We're going to talk about the digital transformation project Mirka is undertaking, including the SAP Spartacus headless architecture implementation. I'm going to ask Matthias about his views on the cloud native, Microsoft Azure, and IoT. Hello, Matthias. Thanks for accepting my invitation.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. It's really interesting.
Yeah, happy to have you here. Maybe we just going to start with short background info, like how you started your career, what you learned in the process before, joining Mirka, and how you landed at Mirka.
So I landed in the software industry already in when I was maybe 14 years old, when my father bought our first PC, and the games weren't that great at the time, so you couldn't fill your whole time with games. So I started thinking, what else can you do with the computer? And then I borrowed the Turbo Pascal handbook from a neighbor, and that's how it took off. So
the PC was your first computer?
Well, I have the Commodore 64, but
only for games.
Yeah, basically. And
I also started with PC and Turbo Pascal, so that's interesting.
Yeah. So I've been following Anders Hejlsberg, who is the creator of Turbo Pascal, quite closely with the coding languages I've used. He's one of the fathers of .NET also, and C# in particular.
Yes.
So and now TypeScript.
Amazing guy.
Yeah, absolutely. So and then it took off. I went to university to study computer science. Did that for a few years. Then I actually switched over. So I actually have a master's in economics. So, but with
master in economics.
Yes, but with computer science as a minor, and that's been really good because it kind of helped me switch the mindset also to the business side of things. So to I think I'm a fairly okay developer, but also with a mindset for understanding that why would somebody want to pay for me writing code, so to say. And
I'm gonna ask you more about this in a second, about your role, because I think it's exactly this role of being a bridge between business and. So how you landed at Mirka?
So I did a normal career in in software development in different companies in Finland, and lastly I was at Fujitsu for a long time. Then I actually started doing some freelancing, and I ended up doing some small things for Mirka, and then eventually they asked if I wanted to jump on board full time with Mirka. So I've been here now for 2 years roughly.
Gotcha. Interesting. So maybe let's give us also a short info about Mirka business, because
yes,
well, it's pretty close to me. Like I know what you are guys doing, but not sure if our listeners are on the same page. So it would be great to hear about it.
Yes, so Mirka is basically family-owned company from Finland, from the west coast of Finland. We manufacture sandpaper and sanding and handheld sanding and polishing tools, basically you could say. So sandpaper is our main business, but the tools are actually the rising, really growing, and they are really great tools. That's why they are gaining so much popularity, because they are really awesome to use. So this is basically what we use: sandpaper and the tools to use that sandpaper.
So it's kind of B2B company.
It's absolutely B2B. The vast majority of our sales are through resellers like hardware chains and more special companies distributing our products worldwide. So we operate in, I don't know how many, but maybe 40, 50 countries at least have our products on sale.
Pretty huge organization.
Yeah, we are about 1,500 people worldwide. So a lot are people working with manufacturing our products, a lot are sales, and then there's the back office staff, so to say, where you can probably count me as well. So
gotcha. How does this online and offline business split? What was the situation when you joined, and what is the situation now?
Well, we haven't really had an online business for ourselves. Some of our resellers have set up shops in a quite limited capacity, and that is about to change now with our different eCommerce initiatives that we are doing, and. But basically, we had like online channels directly for our customers where they could go in and buy online, but we haven't had an online e-commerce public presence in that sense.
And how about the other channels of online orders? I mean, when we were preparing the interview, having the pre-call, you said about the ATI. I think that's pretty interesting thread, especially important for B2B businesses. How does it work?
Yeah, so we have different kinds of integrations with our customers to make ordering easier. We have EDI integration, which is the standard way of doing it and have probably been for tens of years. So that we are doing around the world. And then we also have other ways of communicating with our customers. We have a lot of smaller customers, so they can now send in their orders through email. And then our system will pick up the attachments and create orders out of them automatically. So,
gotcha.
So there are other integration alternatives also, but at the moment we are looking more heavily into giving them a full-blown e-commerce experience. To really engage with our customers, so that they can both, of course, see our products and prices and stuff like that, and order them, but also get access to all other material that they find that they need to be successful with us, basically.
Gotcha. So it was the situation when you joined the company was more like the electronic channels were used mostly for let's say bulk B2B orders between probably other distributors, users of your tools, large scale orders sent between ERPs automatically. And now you are heading towards more like digital experience where you have online shop probably with all the product material information and other stuff, self-service, to have those clients or onboarded directly, not via the distributors.
Yes, exactly. So now we are building. This was actually an initiative that was in its starting phase when I came aboard, and to make the electronic channels for our direct customers, the resellers, much better. So this is something we have actually launched now recently, and it's picking up speed. So we really have big hopes for these new channels for the future, because it gives us a totally different way to communicate with our direct customers about how we are working together, and they have a much easier way of accessing all information that is important to them about finding all the orders and tracking orders and all these things. and seeing how everything is working out and finding out information about products and stuff like that. So we are really hoping for big impact on this new channel.
Gotcha. That makes perfect sense. So when you joined the company, the online presence was almost like nothing, zero. Just the order automation process was digitalized between the backend systems. The company was starting this initiative. So how is your role in this whole engagement, in this endeavor?
Well, my role has been of course as an architect. My role has been to do a lot of technical planning and decisions on how to build up all the technical infrastructure that we need, which is a lot. Mm-hmm. There is immense amounts of information that needs to flow from correctly for a web shop to work with product information and all these things. So what I brought to the table was architectural knowledge on how to set this up, and also, I mean, Mirka's core competence, of course, is the sandpaper and tools business. So I think I also brought a bit of experience from software development projects to the table. So but we have actually been staffing up even more because the needed competences for big projects like this is not to be underestimated. That is one of the learnings we have had. But really making sure that all data can flow. And one of the main things that we have also been looking into is that not to make point-to-point integration. If we buy a new product, we don't want that product to talk directly to another product, because then it will lock them in so hard that it will be hard to replace them, even if there will be a need for it. So, and also all information that we are now lifting out of the different systems, we have really hard been looking at how can we make that information reusable. So all product information that we are gathering, for example, in our new eCommerce product, we took the PIM, the product management functionality there, and made it our new PIM because it was more modern that we had. A lot of information about customer data and all these, we have been exposing those through reusable APIs.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting because I read on your LinkedIn a quote that one of your goals is to make the Mirka API first. What does it mean? That this is exactly like what you just said, that your goal is not to make these integrations just like one-offs, investments, like tight web of connections, like point-to-point connections, but rather make it more reusable, right? Or is it something?
And I think the biggest learning that we have here is that if we integrate to our ERP, for example, if you go into an ERP systems database, that's usually full of historical decisions. You can see how it's been evolving. So the data structures in the database are both containing historical decisions, but also it's built for the it's built by the ERP system for the ERP system. So the data is not built to be exposed. So when we have built now reusable APIs that go to our various backend system, which of course the ERP is one of the most important backend systems, we are really looking at transforming that data so it will be easier to understand for the reader of that data, that you don't need an interpreter or some documentation to understand that all fields should be named as well as possible. No abbreviations that might be in the column names in the database, and of course, and stuff like that. So really to think about the data and really think about who is going to use this data and what would make this data as understandable as possible because people don't have time to read documentation anymore.
Of course. So you start with the service contracts approach.
basically, yeah. We start with the business need, and then we try to think what is needed now. And I usually try to think of stuff that don't generalize it until you have at least two requirements against it, because it's hard to generalize with only one requirement.
Absolutely.
Of course, in a project like this, you might end up with having to do exactly that. You have one use case at the moment, but we need to do an API now to generalize this, and then you may have to make a best case. But really to think about how to expose the data. And I think the tricky part in exposing an API is that if the current user needs a specific data set now, if you include that, then you really need to think that, is there any data here that maybe the next user won't use? And try to split them up into different endpoints, because otherwise that first data set will become so huge that it will become so slow that nobody wants to use it.
So it's pretty much the domain-driven design approach you need to apply on top of those data contracts, figuring out very, very carefully to also not have the APIs too broad, right? Because it makes it more difficult to use and even more difficult to maintain.
Yeah, exactly. So if they are too broad, they will, as you say, be hard to maintain, but also probably slow. But if you have them too granular, then it might be that the user has to do 3 different API calls to get the data they want, and then they have to start aggregating it. So finding the balance there in the APIs, this is something that cannot be underestimated, and this is maybe not a development task. This is a design task, so to say.
Absolutely. And how you approach this issue, like implementation wise? I mean, beforehand it was very popular to implement all set of ESB enterprise service buses, but I suppose it's no longer a case.
Well, actually, all our API are Azure Functions.
Okay.
So we wanted to go the serverless route, well, to take one step back. I mean, first we kind of made a decision when coming from an on-premise setting that we needed to go to the cloud. And then because already Amazon and Azure, they have so immense amounts of services that it will become really difficult for us to make the transition if we start always comparing the different offerings. So we made kind of an Azure first decision, which means that we first look in Azure. Does it have a service to solve this problem good enough? Then we use it. So,
but aren't you afraid of using those cloud native things like specific Azure functions? Doesn't it contain the risk of vendor locking, or maybe the advantage is so huge that you can ignore the vendor locking problem?
Well, the vendor lock is interesting because that's something we have been struggling against. So, of course, the Azure functions that we are using now it's a specific technology, but if you go in and look at how a function is. What it looks like from a code perspective. So it looks like a small console application. It's just a piece of C#.
Is it Java or JavaScript?
We are using C#.
C#, okay.
So, but basically if we want, so of course the technology is .NET. That is difficult to transfer away from. But if we didn't want to use Azure Functions.
Is it doable still?
Yeah, we could just take the code and run it any way we like. So this is a technology we choose to use, but we could lift out the code and run it in a different fashion if we wanted to without a big problem. We could even run it as an Azure function on-prem, but it's still just a piece of it. It's just a piece of C# code that gets a command and it starts executing the code. So the end, what's starting it, the signal to start the code, it could. Yeah, it's really simple technology after all, from a developer perspective. So you don't have to know anything else than C#.
Absolutely. Do you use any other, more specific features of Azure? Because I also, we also discussed that Mirka is doing quite a lot of EOT, monitoring things, and they have pretty cool Azure Edge for IoT and other features. Do you use them as well?
Yes, absolutely. So we use a lot of Azure stuff. So for the Azure Functions, those are then fronted by API management, which is another service from Azure to just take care of subscription keys and stuff like that. Then for the IoT endeavors, so we have like two streams for IoT. One is for factory data. So we have a lot of sensors in all the machines that manufacture sandpaper. And there we have set up quite a lot of integrations with an Azure service called IoT Hub, where which is just an ingestion service. So it's just one integration endpoint for everything. About the vendor lock there, it's actually in IoT there is MQTT and AMQP are the most used protocols. So I think if I remember correctly, we are using AMQP now, but which makes the IoT Hub server replaceable to maybe to Mosquito or some other IoT or messaging service. So we don't feel that we are in a vendor lock, even though we have selected a specific Microsoft technology there for ingesting all our data.
That's really interesting, because what you are saying is that you can still use the cloud native. It's usually lowering the cost and making it easier, doing some specific things, or offering pretty cool UI and other features like this IoT monitoring systems. But still you can avoid the vendor locking if you base on some kind of lower level industry standard protocols.
Yes,
like this
exactly.
AMQP is the way to go, because you can then pick another vendor using exactly the same standard, and you can maybe losing some features, or maybe adding some features if they offer more rich experience, but you can switch.
Yeah, absolutely. So the data coming into our IoT Hub, that goes forward to our data lake, which is basically just, so we have long-term storage there, which is just basically a big number of CSV files. So just normal text files. We could have them in Parquet format. We partially do, but they're also in our data lake. It's just standard. So we are using the Azure data lake, but that is also completely replaceable, and the data is really easily moved away from there if there was a reason to do so.
That's really, really cool approach. I must say that you have this really well thought. It's not that often a case when I spoke with the B2B companies that they have such a, let's say, modern architecture, because it's very modern, but still pretty much standard based. So it sounds like good compromise.
Yeah, it's been working really well, because then the other IoT initiative we have, so in our sanding and polishing machines, we have a lot of sensors in them as well. And we have an app called My Mirka, where you can hook up to your tool with Bluetooth, and then you get a lot of data out, like how much vibrations you have been exposed to, because the more you use something, our tools are really good, so they don't vibrate so much. But anyway, if you use them a lot, you could long term have worse blood circulation in your hands, something called white finger syndrome.
Oh, really?
So this is something.
Aware that something like this exists.
So. So this is something we are trying to avoid by having tools to help people understand when they have been exposed to vibration.
Gotcha.
But there's also a lot of other sensors there as well, and we also have other interesting projects around these that are currently under development. So there we are actually also using IoT Hub for for data communication. And in the future, when we will have Wi-Fi based tools, all tools will be registered as devices in IoT Hub, meaning that they will have their own digital twin. So we are really kind of outsourcing some component development in the data streams to Microsoft, which makes us much more agile, since we only need to take the IoT Hub SDK and put into our sending machines and focus on kind of the drivers or what you would say between the machine and the SDK, and then trust a much bigger team of developers at Microsoft to do like the communication between the tool and the backend system secure and robust, especially secure, because in the IoT space there is a lot of devices that are not developed according to standards. So about the cybersecurity of things here, we have really put a lot of effort into it. We have had actually a lot of support from Microsoft's engineers, where we have discussed these various topics and how to set it up. So even if somebody would manage to break into one machine, they could only expose like the keys and stuff from one machine, but they couldn't do anything with our whole infrastructure. So they couldn't access any data. They couldn't basically flood our systems or anything like that. So
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, when you think IoT, this aspect is very often skipped. But at professional scale in industries like you guys, manufacturing some toolings and other stuff, it's super important. The security.
Yeah, absolutely. And because the data is it's a valuable thing. So you have to be careful with it. Because in some case we might not even own it. So we are only loaning it from its proper owner. So you have to be careful about these things. But then when we are using now IoT Hub for both these scenarios and kind of not unifying the data process, but using the same tools, which has allowed our not that big team. We are very, very reliant on our like partner ecosystem, but when we have been able to find synergies between products in different projects, it has allowed us to be faster, because we don't have to learn different technologies for different projects. So it has actually sped up the process quite a lot.
Thank you for this answer. I really like this discussion. It started with Azure, ended up with IoT, but things pretty much related, as we heard. Let's switch the topic to different one. I mean, this digital transformation project Mirka is undertaking. You briefly told us about. I mean, running the online presence. Can you tell us more about the goals for this project? What stage it is at, and some basic info. I'm super interested.
Yeah, so this partner portal, as we call it, has been recently launched. There we are using SAP technology. We actually did a quite big transformation project with SAP technology. That was the project that was kind of started when I came aboard too. And there we have integrated, or we have replaced our CRM to SAP CRM, just to be able to back up the commerce, the B2B commerce platform in a
So the first step was CRM.
Well, it was a big bang. So there was a lot of things happening simultaneously. And also the marketing automation solution from SAP and Commerce Cloud.
Gotcha.
So Commerce Cloud is SAP's offering for commerce. So it's basically, they also use Azure. So when we host our things in the same data centers as SAP does, we get really low latency between the different parts of the solution. So that's good. But
makes sense.
But there we have started building. Then we are using SAP's Angular-based shop storefront. That I think Spartacus, yes, where Devante also is really heavily involved, and that's basically why we contacted you in the first place to do the front end development, because there wasn't basically any knowledge about the Spartacus product out there. Because there wasn't many people implementing it. But the problem was that the old Hybris was the product that SAP bought way back, that became Commerce Cloud, was very backend based Java coding, where you end up mixing up HTML generation and backend code, and version upgrades become a hassle, and when contacting other customers, we saw that companies were hesitating to upgrade versions because the upgrade projects were became so large. So that's why we absolutely wanted a separation between backend and front end, and then went with the Spartacus product, even though it was kind of new at that time.
Yeah. By the way, I had a great discussion with Tobias Ovejan, Chief Architect of Spartacus. It was episode number 9. So if anyone of our listeners like to hear more on the product itself, it's good to open. And then, which is fun, I also had a discussion with Carsten Thoma, co-founder of Hybris. So, episode number 12. Just, cross-sell of my podcast.
But it's been working out okay. I mean, in what we are trying to do, it's not only a shop, so we have a lot of content also for our users. So that means that we needed a really good CMS system to handle all this content, and we will have a lot of language versions. So we needed a tool that could support both having like hundreds or thousands of pages, and of all those pages we would have eventually we will probably have like 20 language versions. So you need like publishing workflows and everything like that. And there we
do you use the Smart Edit CMS for this?
No. We actually went with Episerver, which we had in-house already, and continue with that, because that's what we found was the best tool for these needs to have with language versions and publishing workflows, and language versions being published in different stages and stuff like that. So
the Episerver as a CMS is also run in a headless mode, let's say.
Exactly.
Right? So
So their story about headless is also getting better. So actually now we have a Spartacus as a kind of monolithic front end that uses then 2 backends, one Hybris for product data and Episerver for CMS. So we had to build in some single sign-in mechanism there for the user to authenticate into both backends, but it's working really well today. Everything like streaming videos and images and all these extra things that you have to take from both backends it's working good. So so the users get a really seamless experience in this case.
Makes sense. If you were when you were setting the architecture, you needed to decide what elements to build, which elements to buy. And I suppose that you already told us that you decided to buy the CMS and the e-commerce backend. Which elements you decided to build on your own and then maintain?
Well, our ERP system is built by ourselves, which
it's custom.
It's 100% custom. Yes.
Nice.
Which is it's an interesting discussion, but I find that it's probably one of the success factors of the company because we are really agile with our ERP system. We publish new versions every Sunday, and we can publish minor versions during the week.
Yeah.
And it's not only our ERP system, it's also our MES system. So it takes care of a lot of production planning and steering a lot of stuff in the factories. So it's huge, but still we are able to be so agile. So on top of that, all like integrations and stuff like that, we wanted to really own. But then the target systems, like a commerce product, was not something I think you can start building from scratch, or a CRM or a CMS. But a lot of things that we need to support our ongoing ERP system, because it makes us so dynamic and flexible with the ERP, because we can basically now, when we have noticed that we need changes because of the new e-commerce business models, it's from discussing with the ERP guys, it takes a couple of days and then it could already be in production, basically. So
you're saying that you actually own that elements that gives you the let's say advantage for the users, better value to the users, because you can faster adapt, and they are very, very, very tightly connected with your business model, which also evolves at any company. And that's the reason why you decided to own it.
Yeah, you could say that. Or I mean, the decision to own the ERP, the decision was made probably 30 years ago. And switching ERPs is not an easy thing to do. So
that's another story. But I think it is like a coin with two-sided.
Yeah, absolutely. So of course there we are looking at a monolith there also, and we are looking at ways to start splitting up the monolith into smaller pieces. Well, the first thing has been the API. So that we don't integrate directly into the ERP, but through our APIs, which makes and we have been able to move away some small features from the ERP into kind of more API related microservices, like pricing logic and stuff like that. So
you are doing this kind of strangler pattern where you replace some of the features with microservices, right? This is the thing.
Yeah, but so far we are not seeing that the current users of the ERP. So if the ERP now has a module, so to say, if we are moving that out, we are basically replicating it, and then everybody who needs that module from that day on, all new users of that module should use the new location, but the old users could use the old location. So this has been the pattern so far, because we are kind of trying the waters here and seeing where we want to end up, and the logic is very complex in many places. So we are doing this transition very slowly to not risk stopping the factories, so to say. So
of course, that's the ultimate goal, to have everything up and running.
Yeah.
But you also said something very interesting, that you are doing those deployments of ERP once per week, which is, believe me, it's not that usual. Like ERP deployments, it's more like something you do once per 5 years. And then just pray for not breaking it up, because it's a big bang deployment. And you are doing this once per week. How you achieve this? Like, I mean, you said also a second thing, which is contradictory to this, that you decided to own the ERP 30 years ago. So of course, I believe it's been rewritten a few times along the way.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's kind of legacy software, and you are doing very agile process on it, like deploying continuously. How you achieve this?
Well, this is not something I should take credit for. This was in place long before me, and has been so for many years. So basically, this is one of the benefits of the self-developed monolith, that it's the architecture is so simple that it's basically client server database. So it's fairly simple to deploy actually, and that's why it's doable. We are looking. So we have now. So it's been built around a lot of PowerShell scripts, the deployment mechanisms. We are right-click deploy, as it's called in the Visual Studio world, where a developer right-clicks something in Visual Studio and then deploys code directly from his machine. That's something that we basically stopped doing. So everything is built on build and release pipelines in Azure DevOps, which is the tool we are using. But we already have automatic builds for our ERP system, and probably pretty soon we will also have, and we have partly automatic continuous deployment, but we hope to have it soon for the whole pipeline for both the client part of it. So it's not web-based, it's actually a Windows desktop application, our ERP at the moment. But to really have continuous deployment, at least to test for everything. So we are looking at streamlining it even more and have even more visibility into what code has gone where. Because this has been one of the other things. We also started using Azure DevOps as our tool. When I came aboard, we were the partners could to some extent influence how they wanted to manage version control and requirements and bug management and stuff like that. Then we decided to create like a Mirka way of working in software projects. So the first thing was to start using a common tool. And there I, just because of my background, had more experience with Azure DevOps from my Fujitsu days than with Jira. So we just went with that tool then. I would say if you want to compare them, the story and bug management, the requirement management part of Azure DevOps is not up to par with Jira, but it's kind of more rigid, so you can't customize it too much, which I think is the problem with Jira, that all companies make it look completely different, so it can even be difficult to transition between them. But the integration in Azure DevOps from the requirement and bug management to branching and pull requests and everything you have with code changes going on the repository onto build and release pipelines is really great when you have an integrated tool. So we have now like a code line visibility into basically all our projects, so we know what lines of code are in dev or test or production in basically all our projects. So the end-to-end transparency here is really something we have benefited from.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the team structure for a while, because I think that the processes are kind of maybe not the result, but support for the team, and the team structure needs to be also agile enough, let's say, and competent enough to have everything up and running. So how big is your team? How is structured to achieve those agility and quick time to market results?
So in-house at Mirka, we have basically two teams. We have the architecture team and we have the ERP team. The ERP team consists of the people that are basically full-time working with the ERP, either as developers or business analysts or taking care of the ERP. And they work really closely with basically dedicated people from our partner network who also work with the ERP. Then we have our architecture team that consists of two architects now since a short while back. So it's me and my colleague Jari, who kind of try to do all technology comparisons and technology decisions, participate in projects, communicate these things back to business about how to think and like this about projects. And then we are now also looking more heavily, or we have actually staffed up on the, should we say, administrative part of running our projects from our side, because the projects have grown larger. So we need more people who can kind of think about project portfolios and stuff like that. So we don't get overstaffed, but actually can start less and finish more, so to say. So so we are really an exceptionally small team at that, but that's kind of been Mirka's strength, that it's not been a so entrenched, bureaucratic culture, but it's been like all hands on deck all the time. So people, here on the Finnish countryside where we live are really good at helping each other and doing what needs to be done. So things get basically done. How do we become so agile? Well, I think it's a lot of good communication inside the company, and then we have been really successful with our products. So we also have economical muscles to do things.
Yeah.
So that's of course helping as well. That we can really jump into these initiatives and maybe not be afraid of failure, because there's this saying that I have never failed, I have only learned.
That's a good one. Yeah, it's not that popular among the enterprises. So I think that this really makes you unique. That you even with the scale, as you said, you keep very very direct connection with the business, which is cool.
Yeah, I think from my earlier career, I've learned that you need some kind of balance. Of course, you need some kind of control also, because otherwise, but not too much control. And just because some small part goes wrong in one project, I think you should be careful with putting in like gates for that or checkpoints for that particular project into your project process, because then you will add work to every single project you have in the company, which will make all the other projects less productive.
Yes. So it's actually the second thing second time when you said that you need to hesitate the too early generalization. You said this about
exactly. Yes.
The APIs as well. Yeah.
That's a very good point. Yeah, because I think you should apply that also to process descriptions and process development. That only when you've encountered the same problem multiple times, you could then start thinking that how can we mitigate this in the future. But don't start mitigating it just because one project had a glitch.
We had a rule of 3F some time ago at Divanta. You know what it means?
No.
It means that when you face a situation when you need to say like fuck, the F word.
Yeah.
For the first time, it's okay. Just say this word and do the shit.
Yeah.
The second time, okay. let's see what happens next. And when there's third occurrence of the situation, you need to take care of that.
Yeah.
And beforehand, it doesn't make really sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it needs to be. You need to be careful with how tightly you control things, because there needs to be some creativity and freedom to do things and experiment, and of course you can fail at least once. And
that's a good one. I never thought about this from this point of view, but it makes perfect sense. Okay, Matthias, my last question for today's call is about the tech trends. I know from the call we had before that you are passionate about doing some, even house improvements using IoT, Alexa, and other things. So you are very up to new tech trends and new tech things. So which ones makes you excited when you think about it?
Well, I mean, since we built our house, I was already then thinking that how could we build in speech here, but there wasn't any good technology. So, but I was really glad when the Amazon Echo came out, and I immediately developed some Alexa skills. So even though we are using a system called KNX, which is an old industry standard for electricity in our house, I was really glad when I could implement voice controlling throughout the house for controlling lighting and stuff like that. And so this is good, but this is kind of becoming kind of standard now. I've never been really good at looking into the future that far. One thing I've actually been thinking about this, that what is like some trend that you should start taking into consideration now when looking at tech. And then even though I'm really technical at heart, what I came up with was the scarcity of developers. This is I think the major trend now, because if you have a developer, I mean, okay, so there are trends you need to start looking into, but if you have like good people who are good problem solvers, they can jump at any problem. It doesn't matter if it's IoT or business intelligence or API coding or whatever. It's just code at the end of the day. But what you need to maybe start looking at is where to get these people and how to make them as productive as possible. And this is one thing I've tried to look at in all the technology decisions that we do, is that from the day a new developer comes in to work on a problem, how can he be as productive as possible as early as possible? So for integrations, for example, we used BizTalk, Microsoft BizTalk, for a lot of integrations. There, before you can do anything, of course, you need to know BizTalk, which is a kind of specialty technology. Additional to that, you of course need to know our business processes to know what to do there. But you also need, since this is an on-premise solution, you need Mirka's VPN client, and you need credentials and everything like that before you can start doing anything.
At this point, you are probably very frustrated.
Well, I mean, that's why, for example, now when we are doing it, we are actually using logic apps in Azure for our new integrations, and all those logic apps just orchestrate things. So what they are orchestrating are either built-in modules in logic apps or Azure Functions, which means that one developer could just get the schema that, hey, here is the data coming in, and we need you to do these things and give some other data out, basically. Maybe that function should call our ERP and insert something into the ERP through our generalized APIs, I should add, which means that this person could really easily jump in and do the job and not have to have a lot of credentials and stuff, not to know as much as earlier, and basically only know how to code, but not have to be familiar with specialty technology like BizTalk, for example. So I think this is something that I've really thought about, that how to make people productive as easily as possible. And there I think also monolithic solutions with hundreds of thousands of rows also hinder productivity a lot, because you get so insecure where to put your code. But if you have like 15 microservices with 1,000 lines of code, it's really easy to find a place where you want to start adding your new code and do stuff. And you don't have to be as careful as to break the coding conventions and patterns and stuff like that. So I think this is probably the biggest trend in software development, or in our field, that how to use people as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, because nothing's in the foreseeable future, nothing is gonna change with the number of people in our industry. I mean, the demand for developers is so high that even if you add 10,000 more developers, the need for 12,000 will be in place. So absolutely, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, so that's really good if you can find synergies, and just basic coding skills should take you at least half the way, and not technology skills.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Okay, Matthias, thank you for this discussion. It was really great. I learned a lot about the IoT, about this attitude to introduce organization changes. I think it was very, very eye-opening. I mean, this avoidance of being too generalistic. I think it's very good balance between startup-ish approach and the enterprise approach, which tends to be very generalistic in the end. So that was great. Thank you for your time. Thank you for preparation for this call. And guys, if you have any questions, feel free to post them under the episode. We're gonna try to answer with Matthias.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you once again.
Thank you, Piotr. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the CTO-CTO podcast. Make sure you hit subscribe and also check out our new YouTube channel where we've prepared some surprises for you. See you next week.